So Newcastle United started the 25-26 season with a pretty solid point under difficult circumstances, to say the least, down at Villa Park. So I'm going to bring you the first last word of the season where we talk about 5 main things that we learnt from that opening day draw on Saturday. It's all coming up, Newcastle fans, so do us a favour and make sure you stick around. Welcome back to Black White Banter, ladies and gentlemen. And we have started the season pretty strong. Plenty to be positive about on Saturday. I was down there. I did get my match reaction put out on YouTube, but I just didn't really have a chance to get a match vlog. I've started mixing up my travel these days down to away games. So sometimes when you get the train, it's not really the right crowd to get the fan interviews and things like that because it's quite a rowdy old bunch go down on the train. It's just been a bit of a mixed bag. Sometimes you get in just before the match starts and it's all a little bit frantic. So I am going to work on that. But if you're new around here, do me a little favour, Newcastle fans. Whack that subscribe button and most importantly, give me a thumbs up because that helps this video go to a fair few more people. So doing that, which is a second of your time, means a lot to me. And get Black White Banter across all social media. So we always knew it was going to be a difficult start of the season down at Villa Park, a place where we have not done very well at all. As I said on my match preview, 1 win in the last 6, to be exact. Not the best record by any means. And I did think that this would be a good game to start the season with because there'll be a lot of teams go down to Villa Park and come away with nothing. The more that they get in their rhythm. And yes, they've had their own transfer issues this summer. Very similar to what we did last year because of those beautiful 3 letters, PSR. So they may be not going to be as strong this season, but Unai Emery is no mug, and I do expect them to pick up a lot better than what they played against. So generally speaking, I thought Newcastle were the much better team. An Aston Villa fan, as I was leaving Villa Park on Saturday waiting for the train, he said the words, "We were there for the taking," and I couldn't have put it any better. Straight from the horse's mouth, or the villain's mouth, should we say. And he was bang on. Newcastle United had all of the ball, all of the purpose, all of the intent, but we huffed and we puffed. And in the shape of a certain Swedish striker, we did not have the answers to break through. And our questions, as we left Villa Park and made the journey back to Tyneside, were all about the striking situation, which just wound me up that little bit more. That he was probably sat, not at home, because I don't think he currently has a home. He was sat somewhere watching the game, no doubt, even if he just flicked in and out to see that we were missing chances, and I wouldn't surprise me at this point whether that bloke got some satisfaction from that. But on this new episode for the season starting, this is the last word, so welcome. What we're going to do on this video is talk about what I think are the 5 key things that we learned from the match, both positive and negative, because you do get both sides on this Black and White Banter channel. So let's get straight into it with number 1. First one for me has got to be a certain Italian maestro, Sandro Tonali. Sandro! I thought he was absolutely fantastic on Saturday and arguably, other than a couple of our defenders, the best player on the pitch by some distance. There's lots of talk about Alexander Isak being the best player we have and us potentially losing the best player. I'm sure there is a certain Italian who was in the centre of that midfield who might argue that case. I do think he is one of the most talented central midfielders to ever put on the black and white shirt. And in the green shirt on Saturday, I just thought from the first whistle, he was brilliant. He was purposeful. He was calm on the ball. His passing was very, very good. And I look at some of his stats, and I'll share them on the screen. 5 recoveries won, 3 duels, 2 chances created. And of course, as soon as the second minute, that lovely weighted pass for Anthony Elanga that put him clean through on goal that could have set us on our way quite early doors. I think Sandro Tonali really, really looked a class above. And I'm hoping, as we all expected coming into the season, that he is really, really laying down a foundation for what's to come because it's his level of Champions League experience away from the Premier League that is going to be key as we go into that 8-fixture Champions League campaign that I think a lot of us are forgetting about. We had a good rhythm early doors. The fitness levels look really good. And Sandro Tonali epitomised everything good that we did on Saturday. And I think he really outshone another certain midfielder for Newcastle that I'll touch on later in this video. But Sandro, if that's how you're starting the season, start as you mean to go on, son. And we would love to see performances like that week in, week out. And that Liverpool game next Monday is going to need that kind of quality and that kind of energy in the midfield if we are going to get anything from the league champions. Next up for me was what I would call a relatively positive debut for £55 million man Anthony Elanga. I think all eyes were on him coming into this match. I said before the game that I thought Jacob Murphy was going to start because Eddie Howe not only likes to bed players in, but I was worried that Anthony Elanga is still learning this system and learning the defensive side of playing in an Eddie Howe team. He's a very counter-attack biased player. I thought we saw both the good and the bad of Anthony Elanga. I thought we saw the good in terms of that energy, that pace, which was electric at times. Really, really quick down that right-hand side where needed. When he was one-on-one with his man, we saw the pace to get in behind that chance. We don't need to tell Anthony Elanga that he should have scored. I've seen a lot of comments in the aftermath of Saturday's game saying he should have squared it to Gordon. Yes, some players do things like that in that scenario, but I am not begrudging a player on his Premier League debut for Newcastle trying to score when you are basically clean through. Straight at the keeper. Don't think it was a great save necessarily. It just wasn't a very good shot. And that was quite frustrating. He could have had two on another day. He had a half volley that, again, just needed a little bit more composure at a key moment when he was watching the ball drop. And, of course, he could have had an amazing assist, but he did get the assist for the red card in the second half. Ali McCoist, I believe, said on commentary that pace recognises pace, and it was a beautifully weighted ball for Anthony Gordon to run in behind when Elanga had drifted from that right-hand side position. So all in all, on another day, 2 goals potentially and an assist would have been an incredible debut. The not so good that I think is going to take work from my own observations is that Anthony Elanga is certainly learning playing in a possession team. And what I mean by that is we all know it was quite public that Eddie Howe was not a big fan of Alan St. Maximin. And what I saw on Saturday was Anthony Elanga very often getting the ball and running into trouble. He is going to be surrounded by bodies because of the sort of player he is. Teams will double up on him. But rather than passing and keeping the ball at times when that is the smarter option, he was running into traffic, running into corners, trying to take on 1-2 and losing the football. And of course, there were a couple of moments when his deliveries into the box weren't great. His final product wasn't great. But also, we don't have a striker to be aiming for here. I know Anthony Gordon, and again, we'll touch on him later in this video, he did do a lot of the things asked of him in a makeshift position, but I thought Anthony Elanga, we saw the good, we saw the very good. I saw why Eddie Howe wanted him. I saw why I thought it was what Newcastle needed with that electric pace, and he's going to offer us so much this season. But also they're not so good. And I do think the man needs to learn Eddie Howe's way of playing, not only at the attacking end, but at the defensive end as well. Next up for me has to be that defence, or should I say that green brick that we saw on Saturday. Look, I'm not going to sit here and say that Aston Villa were at the races. We found out in April what Aston Villa on their day can do, and yes, we weren't good that day, so it's kind of flipped in that sense. And Ollie Watkins, who has terrorised us in his last 4 home games with 7 goal contributions, that's probably the quietest you'll see him all season playing in this Aston Villa side, but I do think partly that's down to a very, very resolute back 4. You know what you get in Tino Livramento on the back of that incredible summer with England for the Euros. Kieran Trippier, the experience he offers when he's not clapping the fans for telling him he shags who he wants. If you haven't seen that clip, you need to. But I thought Shea and Byrne were absolutely fantastic man for man. And we are looking at a Newcastle team now with the addition of Malik Chow, and I'm going to post a video on him this week and what I think he offers that Newcastle don't have. We have some incredibly healthy competition for places in the 4 competitions we are in them centre-back spots. I don't want Dan Burn to slow down, and he didn't on Saturday. And let's just talk about a couple of his stats. 75% of his aerial duels won, as you'd expect from Dan Burn. Great ball recoveries. I just thought the pair of them were very, very good, apart from when they got in each other's way for that attack, which, you know, I'll let them off there. Fabian Schär, of course, he tries the more extravagant passes sometimes. So some of his stats, when you look at them, can be a little bit swayed. But generally speaking, I thought from Trippier all the way along to Livramento, we were rock solid. And obviously Nick Pope had very little to do, so you couldn't say much about him. But in them centre-back areas, you're talking about what? Malik Chow with his pace and his youth. You've got Fabian Schär, experienced, good professional, good passer of the ball. knows this Newcastle team inside out. Dan Burn, my player of the season last year. You've got Jamal Lascelles, who's back in the fold, who got lots of minutes in pre-season, and I'm rooting for him, even just for his leadership alone. You've got Sven Botman, who we're hoping can get back to the Sven Botman, the Rolls Royce that we all know. Great reader of the game, very, very good player. And you've even got Emil Kraft in there as an option. So you've got 6 players for generally in Eddie Howe's 4-3-3 system for 2 positions, and that's a positive. And I really hope that we can go back to the Newcastle team that doesn't concede tons and tons and tons of goals. We do want to be that rock-solid defensive unit that especially helped us get Champions League not too long ago in Eddie Howe's first season when we got to the first Carabao Cup final and secured Champions League with Botman and Shea, and obviously Dan Burn left back at times. But we have under Eddie Howe been pretty solid defensively generally, other than the season we were riddled with injuries. But that's the difference here. We now have more players in that position if we do get hit by injuries in these competitions. I was impressed. For me, at number 4 is the less positive. I do think there was a couple of players, and I don't want to be too critical because it is the opening game. Eddie Howe's Newcastle team, which is why I was actually generally quite impressed, do start seasons a bit slow because of this intense pressing style, especially after long pre-seasons in Singapore and Korea, Espanyol, Atletico Madrid. There's been a lot of matches across the summer, but there were a couple of players out there who didn't impress me, and in my opinion need to do a little bit more. We'll start with Harvey Barnes. Now, assuming this striking situation sorts itself out one way or another, whether that is with Mr. Sulker, the Swedish Sulker, or with other players coming in, which we need, you would assume that Anthony Gordon eventually will be moved back over to that left-hand side. And with Anthony Elanga coming in for the right, you don't need to think too much now, in my opinion, about Gordon or Barnes playing on the right-hand side. It's Murphy and Elanga for the right-hand side role in this front three, and Barnes versus Gordon. And Harvey Barnes started the game well, could have got a really good assist for that lovely cross he put in for Gordon. Couple of moments here and there. I'm aware that Barnes doesn't like the ball in one-on-one areas. He prefers to be on the shoulder, and I think he gets let down in our system sometimes a little bit because of that. But I thought he really petered off. I thought his decision-making was bad at times. A couple of wayward shots, particularly in the second half when we were trying to knock on the door of 10 men. And I think he needs to improve on that opening game, and he'll probably know that, and Howell have told him that. And then, similarly, a player that we don't like to say too many negative things about, I thought Bruno was massively off it. Great that he's our captain. We all idolise him in that sense. He's never short of emotion when he's on the field, but I thought his passing was sloppy. He surrendered possession a couple of times, and his decision-making just was not quick enough. And as I mentioned at the start of this video, Sandro Tonali and even Joe Linton to a degree, despite his expected yellow card, upstaged him. And I think Bruno started last season slow, but I thought that was because of like a weight problem, it looked like a little bit. He'd had a long summer. He probably enjoyed himself after playing in a tournament for Brazil, and he came back and he took a long time to get in his rhythm, as a lot of Newcastle players did. This season, I thought he's looked quite sharp in pre-season. He's had no real excuse, but he really, really fell short. Even in advanced positions, he wasn't quite looking at the races. He wasn't that central figure, that central pivot that connected our defence to our attack at all. And I was constantly in the stands, as were people around me, frustrated at what I was seeing with him, whether it was giving the ball away, whether it was not being quick enough and getting caught on his heels by the Aston Villa midfield. So that's an area, and we're going to see that in the opening game. A couple of areas for me specifically that I thought needed improvement. And lastly, for me, I'm not going to state the obvious and say Newcastle need a striker, because, God, you do not need to watch a YouTube video this long into it, if anyone's still sticking around this far, to know that. But what I learned on Saturday more than anything, which was great to see, is there is a togetherness in this squad with the players that do want to wear the badge for Newcastle United. And that's the key here. We all wondered how this has affected them, and of course it has, because you have got one of your best players that you know is propelling you to them next levels, not wanting to be around. But this group showed enough for me on Saturday that they have really, really come together, and they are determined to not only prove him wrong, wanting to leave this club, but prove every single voice in the stands, in the media, externally, that they are ready for a big season ahead with Champions League and whatnot. And that's all I'm bothered about. I'm bothered about what the on-field matters are, and what the players who want to be here and wear that black and white shirt, what they're doing. And I think that was totally cemented in the unity from the fans. Yes, we made our feelings known at full time, but that's the key. we stuck with them players from the first whistle to the last because they didn't deserve to hear a chance about Alexander Isak. We want to support them till the tilt, and that's what we do with players that want to be here. We need a striker. This situation has to resolve itself one way or another. I'm still in the camp that the better of the football club is more important. Yes, you might not want to see Isak wear the shirt anymore because of how many bridges he's burnt, but we still cannot go into this season with Anthony Gordon and a very raw rookie William Asula as our only forward line, and even that is in inverted commas because it's a makeshift one. But I saw enough from that group going into the next game against Liverpool, which is going to be a quiet night in the library to say the least, to feel confident moving forward. Ramsey's a good addition. I'll do a video on him. Malik Chow's a good addition. Ramsdale was the goalkeeper option that a lot of us needed, even if he wasn't the first choice one, obviously with Trafford in mind. And Alanga, we saw enough from him on Saturday to see what he's going to offer to that attack. Questions still need answering. We need bodies through the door. But the players who want to be here and don't insult us fans, insult this football club, and insult the people paying their wages, are ready for the fight and ready for a big season ahead. Newcastle fans, if you stuck around this long, let us know your thoughts. What did you take away from Saturday's game? A lot of positives there, maybe a couple of negatives, but let me know in the comments any of you've missed off, and there'll be more videos to come in the week. Thank you very much for watching on that very interesting, to say the least, Bank Holiday Monday game against Liverpool we go, and as always, keep the faith. Away, lads!